All right, we're live. Modern Relics podcast. I'm Angel. He's Lucky. Still,
Hey everybody.
that's who we are. Still. Yeah.
Sure.
What's going on, man? What's happening? How are you?
It's been a crazy week for me because we just got done with the weekend of Friday the 13th,
Yeah.
which in the tattoo world it's a big deal. All of the masses come out. It is kind of a holiday for tattooers, and we get to actually kind of do marathon tattooing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all basically small flash things at a discounted rate, and it's kind of a customer appreciation thing. But we also, like have a lobby of 25 people constantly, for 15 hours, and we don't just do it on Friday, we do it all weekend.
Yeah, it's
And
an
so
event.
we go, yeah, it's crazy. So we've got to do that. And in the meantime, besides kind of coming off of that, I also, unfortunately, the guests that we had tonight, which I posted about on the social media, the guests that we were supposed to have tonight both had to postpone
Yeah.
because there was national stuff going on with TradFam that just happened to pop up and they had to deal with it. So basically, Senator Ben Taves and Stephanie Fetzer will hopefully be coming back shortly after I get done with my travel schedule.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to kind of touch base on maybe what he was working on, maybe some other things that are kind of correlate with it. I know that they had an event in the park that went really well, especially during the fact that it was during the No Kings Saturday protest.
How was the turnout for your No King Saturday protest?
Our No Kings, actually, we had the bust in, about 800 people. Most of them were old. Like I would say 75% of them were geriatric, were boomers, were people in their,
so they weren't throwing their bricks very far, at least. No t-shirt cannons, no cool DJs.
No.
Bummer.
You had a couple of younger kind of like more aggressive activist types that were trying to rally them up, but how do you rally an old folks home like that? So
you send them to a discounted seniors breakfast buffet is how you do it.
And but yeah, and then it was all scheduled. So like in Spokane, they were there from like noon to or like 10 a.m. to 1, and then they drove over and they were doing Coeur d'Alene from 2 to 4, and then they would go up to Sandpoint from 5 to 7. So it was the same group of people that they just bust around, much like that guy that we were discussing last week who had that crowds for hire or whatever, crowds on demand or whatever.
Did anybody get to ask them how much they were getting paid for their tour that day?
I don't think so. I was working. I was in the middle of that Friday the 13th weekend, but I saw a couple of videos from anti-protester types that go down there and kind of document that stuff. And no, they were kind of just antagonistic in a juvenile way. They weren't actually asking probing questions. They were just kind of poking the bear and trying to get them riled up and kind of going at them like Kamala, you don't want kings, but man, they're right. Kamala didn't get a single vote. She was just installed. You guys wanted a queen, and although correct, you're not going to get to the bottom of why they're there or how much they're paid or like what their purpose was.
Yeah.
No one really even understood the ambiguous nature of it.
You're just like vomiting platitudes back and forth at one another.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do agree on pushback. I think that, there should be some, but it should be done intelligently. And it should be done in a way that actually creates either a dialogue or does something that moves the needle in your direction, not just bashing heads in the middle of the street. It doesn't make any sense. So I don't know. I thought it was silly. I thought the protest was silly because no one really knew why they were there or what they were really protesting. It was kind of an amalgamation of just kind of we're crying, we're upset, we're unhappy with the fact that we lost the election and that we aren't happy with what's going on in the world right now. But no one really had a real kind of, there was no driving factor to it. It was just kind of an amalgamation of dumb ideas, because the idea that Trump is a king or is even trying to be, the fact that you're out there protesting the king proves that he's not one.
Right.
If he was a king or was trying to be a king, he would have put a stomp down on all of you guys and made it illegal to protest him. But you weren't, you were allowed to do all of that. So the whole concept of it was silly, but I think the response to it, even though it was probably the biggest manufactured wall-to-wall, coast-to-coast protest in human history, I have to give it credit for that. It was well organized in that regard, but it didn't, I don't think it really made the splash that they thought it was going to.
I don't think so either.
It felt kind of like it fizzled. Like there was a lot of people that did nothing.
I think there's a lot of people that are pissed that it fizzled, and I think they want to do something else again. So I don't think this is the last one of these that we'll see, but I have an answer. And maybe even, if you're listening to this podcast and you want to participate, I think there's a little money we can make in turning out for something like this. Stay with me. I'll try and land this plane. I think if you get a buddy or yourself that has a drone and you're taking photographs of the crowds as they gather, you need to creep in there somewhere dressed as Where's Waldo. See if we can get an overview topographical shot, and then I will make a calendar book. Oh, there's somebody at my house. Interesting. I'll make a calendar book of Where's Waldo for those. Here, I'll be right back, guys.
Yeah. I'll take it from here. So I think that's a genius idea. I would love to make a protest Where's Waldo calendar. I think that's a really, really good idea. So hopefully that would be something that we can look forward to in the future. Besides that, though, I think that the protest in and of itself did flounder outside of numbers. It had numbers, but no substance. And which I'm not complaining. I never thought they had some substance to begin with. So I didn't really think that we were going to get anything out of it. But at least it didn't become what a lot of people suspected, which was had the capability of being a triggering or a match to spark off a kind of beginnings of civil war, which I'm glad it didn't do any of that. So I'm glad it was benign. I'm glad that it had no teeth to it and no substance to it. I'm glad that it just kind of fizzled. But who's at your door?
A delivery. So what's interesting about some of the delivery folks down here, especially when you have to sign for stuff, is they will routinely rent a car for the day and then just pick up charter deliveries in a rental car, or in today's case, one of those $19.99 per day U-Haul moving vans. There's just a random U-Haul outside of my house with some random dude in a ponytail that's knocking on the door. I'm like, I didn't order any movers. What is this? It was a certified package. So I was like, oh, you're not supposed to be here till Thursday. Rock and roll. Thanks for showing up early. So we good. I was just like, why is there a man at my door? Anyway. No, I'm joking about the Where's Waldo thing, but would that not be sick? Like the Where's Waldo?
Oh, yeah.
No Kings edition, and then you have to find a Where's Waldo somewhere in that crowd.
I love that idea.
I think we could make it back, and then we could reinvest it into a conservative charity of our choosing, and just highlight all the masked folks. I mean, we don't have to get signatures. They're all going to be hooded and masked, so it's not like we're...
What better way to capitalize on their socialism, you know what I mean?
That's exactly what I want, more than anything else.
Yeah.
No, that's turning frowns upside down.
Yeah. That's a great idea. So
mail us your Where's Waldo photos. We'll make us a book out of it. All right, so we got some stuff. My week, in short, was lame. I got no sleep last night, and I mean like 2 hours, so I'm running on fumes.
Was it the dog?
Yeah, a combination of things. It's wildly hot, and I didn't turn my timer on for the cooling thing, so I'm just sitting there tossing and turning. Like, God, it's hot in here. So I fixed that, which takes about an hour to figure out anyway, and then just couldn't shut my head off for most of the night. And then the dog started, and by then it was like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, maybe I just take a shower and start my day and just no sleep it. But instead I got a wink or two, got right back up at 6:45 like usual, and off I went to the coffee machine. So we'll try again tonight, see where that goes. Short week though. I'm off on Thursday and Friday of this week, which is sweet. And then you're coming down here pretty soon. I unfortunately have to go back up to the Emerald City for a couple of days and then come right back down here. So I'll be here for the first and latter part of your trip down, which will be fun. So we'll have some things to do. But otherwise, It's just been work. So we have some stories tonight. Where do you want to go first? Do you want to talk about some mayoral candidates being detained? Do you want to talk about...
I would.
Let's
go there.
Have you heard any of this, first of all?
I haven't.
Okay, so federal agents arrest New York City mayoral candidate at an immigration court. This comes to us from BBC. The New York's top financial officer who's running to be its next mayor was handcuffed and arrested by federal agents while guiding a defendant out of immigration court on Tuesday. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, detained Brad Lander, who's the city's comptroller, for, quote, assaulting law enforcement and impeding a federal officer, end quote. The incident comes amid an immigration crackdown that we're all aware of. Videos of the incident show Lander leading a man through the hallway and requesting that the agents show a judicial warrant to detain them. Then a spokesperson for Lander's campaign said the comptroller was simply escorting a defendant out of immigration court when he was arrested. He's cited as yelling, "You do not have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens." Lander is telling ICE agents in the video as they put him in handcuffs. ICE said Lander was simply undermining officials, end quote. Then we have a bunch of spokespeople for ICE. Our heroic law enforcement officers face a 413% increase in assaults against them. It's wrong that politicians seeking higher office undermine law enforcement and safety to get a viral moment. And this comes from Homeland Security spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin. No one is above the law, and if you lay a hand on a law enforcement officer, you will face consequences. So, upon his release, Lander said no charges were being brought against him. He claims that the man, Edgardo, had been stripped of his due process rights by government and a judge that owe him a credible threat hearing before they deport him. Now, this goes on, but it opened up a question for me that was, what are the rights of illegal aliens in this country? Because that's what we seem to be taking to the streets about. I think it
seems to be where people get stuck in the weeds about and the mud. They do not fully understand what I think are fairly simple logistics of this. But yeah, go ahead and kind of.
Well, I went on a little research, foray on this question. And I'm going to bring you information from the Clearwater Law Group of the Tri-Cities. And the way that this article is written from them is titled 5 Rights of Undocumented Immigrants. So even the choice of language between illegal alien and undocumented immigrant, I think the listener can probably figure out which way it's going to sway. But there are some interesting points. So I'm going to read this article probably in its entirety. So give me a little bit of a long leash. We'll discuss it afterwards, okay? I'll try not to screw this up. So the question: does the U.S. Constitution protect undocumented immigrants? The Constitution protects all people living in the United States, regardless of immigration status. Most constitutional provisions apply based on a personhood, not a citizenship. In other words, if an individual is physically present in the U.S., they are entitled to the protections granted by the Constitution. This includes the right to due process and equal protection under the law. The Fifth Amendment, for example, states that, quote, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, end quote. And the 14th Amendment uses the due process clause that describes the legal obligation of all state governments to provide equal protection of the laws to all persons regardless of immigration status. So, while undocumented immigrants are not specifically mentioned in the Constitution, they're still protected by its principles. Interesting choice of language there. Question 2. What are undocumented immigrants' rights? Being an undocumented immigrant in the United States does not mean you have no rights. The U.S. government has an obligation to uphold the human rights of everyone within its borders, including undocumented immigrants. And here are 5 of the most important rights that undocumented immigrants have in the United States. Number 1, due process. The issue of due process is often at the forefront of debates surrounding immigration law. Due process is the legal principle that ensures that everyone is given a fair and impartial hearing before the government takes away their life, liberty, or property. This right is guaranteed by the 5th and 14th Amendments of the Constitution. Undocumented immigrants have the right to be informed of the charges against them, the right to an attorney, and the right to present evidence in their defense. Illegal immigrants who have been in the country for less than 2 years and apprehended within 100 miles of the U.S. border may be subject to expedited removal proceedings, which do not include a hearing before an immigration judge. However, if they're asylum seekers, they must be granted a chance to present their case before an immigration judge. The right to legal counsel. The 6th Amendment of the Constitution guarantees the right to legal counsel in all criminal proceedings. Note that down. Under this amendment, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall have the assistance of counsel for its defense, end quote. If an undocumented immigrant faces deportation, they have the legal right to representation. The government must provide them with an attorney if they cannot afford one. Since most deportation proceedings are civil, not criminal, the right to counsel is not guaranteed. Sorry, guys. Going to throw that out there. Under the zero tolerance policy signed by President Trump in 2018, all undocumented immigrants caught crossing the border illegally are criminally prosecuted and, as a result, entitled to legal counsel. The right to be with family. The right to live with one's family is recognized as a fundamental human right by multiple international treaties and declarations. See how we've deviated from the Constitution so suddenly in the third,
The
goalpost
is now way over there.
Yeah.
And the goalpost is now in a different country. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
really small, almost innocuous print. While the U.S. Constitution does not expressly guarantee this right, the Supreme Court has recognized it as a fundamental right protected by the Due Process Clause of the 5th and 14th Amendment, which means the government can't take away this right without going through legal process and providing compelling justification. Criminal history is compelling justification, unfortunately, as is the crime of border jumping. Uh-oh. It's almost like it dies on its face, but I love the legalese. The courts have used the right to be with one's family to strike down various immigration laws and policies, including the Trump administration's family separation policy. Since the family unity of undocumented immigrants is often disrupted by deportation, the U.S. government must prevent such separations whenever possible and provide reunification services when they do occur. Really? That's not written in the policy at all. That's a supposition you're making, but cool.
Also, can we also denote real quick that they keep framing it as Trump's policies?
Yeah. Not that Obama or Clinton or anybody else on the Democratic side had a hell of a lot to say and actions taken to deport thousands of people under their presidential terms, but we can get into that in a minute.
These aren't his policies.
They're not his policies.
These are the United States policies,
Yep.
but they're framing it as if he made some dictate.
Yep.
That he's the one who command. Okay, yeah. So anyway,
Although there
continue.
were mandates put down where people were patrolling the streets to make sure that Americans had to stay in their homes during COVID.
Yeah.
Minneapolis comes to mind.
Yeah.
The right against unreasonable searches and seizures. We go back to the Constitution, right? The 4th Amendment of the Constitution guarantees the right of everyone in the United States against unreasonable searches and seizures by the government. This means the government cannot enter your home or search your belongings without warrant or probable cause. The Supreme Court again extended this right to undocumented immigrants, holding that they have the same 4th Amendment protections as U.S. citizens and legal residents. The only caveat, however, is for border search exemptions. The search exemption allows the government to conduct warrantless searches within a 100-mile radius of any U.S. border, including airports. As a result, undocumented immigrants in this area will be subject to warrantless searches of their persons, homes, and belonging. It goes on to talk about the Flores settlement and the right to education, which kind of doesn't have much bearing. The key takeaway, they say, Although undocumented immigrants are not guaranteed all the same rights as U.S. citizens and legal residents, they have certain protections under the Constitution. These include the right to due process. Again, civil versus criminal, by the way, important there. Right to be with family, right for unreasonable searches and seizures, and the right to education. If you're an undocumented immigrant, it's important to know your rights so that you can assert them if necessary. At Clearwater Law Group, we're a team of experienced deportation defense lawyers who can help you understand your rights and options. So schedule your free consultation and know about your rights in greater detail. I would love to believe this if it wasn't written on WordPress, but their clever use of stretching and saturating meanings where they're not true and also not to the exact letter of the Constitution was comical at best. So I wanted to bring that up as the defense. So now we're taking to the streets en masse and we're saying everyone has the right to be here. Borders don't exist. We're all the same. And it's
by their
this
argument, then what is the point of even having immigration laws at all? What is the point of even having any type of structure to any country or border?
I did email them that question and we'll see if we get a response.
Okay. Yeah. Because I mean, it literally just erases any form of structure. And are we the only country in the globe that has to abide by this very skewed version of how they interpret the Constitution? Like,
well,
why is it that no other country has to abide by any of these standards that they've set for our country, where anyone can come and go as they please? They are we are obligated, not just the fact that we allow it, but we're obligated to give them anything that they ask for, including education.
Most of this is in tandem with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, neither of which are the United States Constitution.
Right.
So thanks for playing. It's the interpretive word, which means they tie these things up through a bunch of senseless litigation, and then it goes to a Supreme Court to set some sort of precedent ruling on these things. And they typically find the most extreme cases where it's like the most possible favorability when it comes to asylum seeking or someone that was assaulted or something like that. But the en masse statistics, both from the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the United States Department of the Interior on all the numbers for the folks that are seeking asylum versus the proven criminal activity that need to get deported right away are staggering by comparison. So they're trying to find the one. It's the same attack pattern on the Second Amendment with all the gun stuff. We need to set some sort of precedent that we could attack the manufacturer of the firearm to justify the shooting that occurred. This way, if they accept fault or we can demonize them on a public scale, it sets a precedent to then start attacking all firearms manufacturers.
Yep.
It's the exact same pattern. Yeah. So I encourage folks to actually read the Constitution. I think I've been doing that for 3 years now.
Yeah.
Because what's the very first line, little pop quiz? What's the very, very first opening statement of the U.S. Constitution that might set the precedence for the context within every other word written in that document? Pretty sure it's something along the lines of "We the people of the United States," correct?
Right.
In order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, and go on and on and on. Like that sets your borders, don't it? In the context of what the provisions are for the people born into that country. The
United States is the key point.
Holy shit. It's almost like they led with that. Those guys must have been up to something back then.
Yeah.
So that's the part that I think is hilarious when they're like, well, but the interpretive word or the operative word of no persons versus no United States born citizen. Like these weren't.
These are a group of people who literally fought for the borders of the United States.
It wouldn't just go,
the United States,
people
and they would
sounds
just go,
good, right? People?
Anybody and everybody who wants to be here. They implemented immigration policy from its inception. They weren't even allowing certain people in. They were allowing others. they've always had this concept. This isn't new. This isn't something that like Trump just decided that certain undesirables, as they're trying to paint them, uh, aren't allowed in the country. This has always been,
Yeah.
and we've allowed during the Ellis Island era, and then again after in the mid '60s, we've allowed for legal immigration into the country.
And there's processes and inroads that we haven't spent enough time talking about that can turn any old somebody into part of the clan of we the people of the United States. You can do it.
Yeah.
You can become a citizen, and magically all of these rights and, you know, appointments are afforded you as a United States citizen. It's just that simple.
But the hypocrisy of the fact that they're trying to make it seem as if this is something that only the United States is in their mind guilty of. Like back in 2000, I want to say 6 maybe. No, it had to have been later than that. It was 2008, 8 or 10 or I don't know, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Aaron and I went to Canada to go to Victoria for one of our wedding anniversaries. I think it was our 6th wedding anniversary. We went up there. Yeah, it's a 14 years.
Took her
ago,
up there for
whatever the
some
math
Tim
is on it.
Hortons coffee.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. Well, there was actually a tattoo convention, and it was the first time I had ever tried to work outside of the borders
yeah.
of the United States.
Yeah, good luck with
And-
that.
Right. So I'm talking with the show promoter, and it happened to fall right around our wedding anniversary, and we loved Victoria. We'd been there before on our 3rd year. So I was like, let's go to Victoria. Let's do this show. I'll tattoo in Canada. We'll go and hang out in Victoria. It'll be fun. And it's just a boat ride up there. It's a ferry ride from Seattle. So we decided it's like a 2.5 hour boat ride. And so we got the ferry, went up there, and I had been talking with the promoter, and the promoter saying, hey, I was like, I've never worked outside of the country. What do I need permit wise? What do I need to make sure that I can do it legally there? And trying to do my due diligence. And he goes, oh, don't worry about it. We have a blanket work permit for the entire event for everyone who is working within the walls of this event. We have a working permit. And
Good luck
being
selling
naive,
that to the Border Patrol.
Yeah, I did have a hard time selling it to the Border Patrol because the minute we pulled off that boat, and I'm excited, and I've got a Subaru full of like tattoo gear and like tchotchkes and toys for the tables and paintings and flash art and stuff like that all on the back, ready to go. And the Border Patrol agent who had sleeves was like looking in the back of my car and going, what is all that? And I was like, oh, I'm working the tattoo convention. I see you have sleeves. You should come on down. And they're like, actually, sir, pull over. They pulled us out of our car, pulled us into a small room where we sat there forever, and they combed through my social media. And they went through everything, and then they came back. They had our passports, and they said, okay, so here's the deal. You just admitted that you're going to be working within our border, and you don't have the proper authority to do that.
Yep.
So
You don't have near
here's
enough maple syrup to make those loonies and toonies. Not today,
Right.
son.
So they're like, unfortunately, that was the last boat back to the US. So you have to stay the night here. So we're going to keep your passports and you guys get to stay the night, but you need to be back here by 9 a.m. or we're going to issue an international warrant for you, which means they would have arrested me and
Yeah.
kicked me out of their country. And so I went, oh, I'm not welcome because I didn't abide by the rules. So I had a nice evening with my wife. We had dinner. We stayed at the hotel for one night. We canceled the other 4 nights. Then we, at 8 a.m. the next morning, she went to go get the car, and I've got all the luggage on the sidewalk, and there's a couple of tattooers standing there, and we know our own. We can smell each other. So, and they come over. Hey, man, are you working the show? I was like, no. And I told them the story, and they're like, how did you not get through? I have an undocumented Mexican guy and an undocumented Italian guy up in the room right now. How did you not get in? And I was like, I don't know. I was honest. And I didn't lie. And so they kicked me out. And so we have now you know, she comes and picks me up, load up the luggage, and then we go down to the ferry. They didn't even give us our passports back until our car was fully on the ferry.
Yeah.
And then at that point, okay. Sorry, I just got a notification that my computer might be losing power, and I don't know why. But so at that point, we got shipped off, you know, and we have never been back since, because I know the minute, even now in 2025, even now, if I cross that border, I'm on a list.
Yep.
And I will get pulled into a room and they will comb through my social media for as long as it takes to see if they can find anything about me working there. Because the last time I came through, it's the same thing with DUIs going into Canada. If you have anything on your record, they're going to pull you aside because they don't want you there if you are known to be a troublemaker, someone who's going to break the law, anything like that. You get kicked out. So why the hypocrisy? Why is it okay for them to do that? And I'm perfectly fine with that. That's how a country should handle its situation.
Yep.
We should be handling our southern border and our northern border just the same. I do not understand why we think it is okay to just allow people, like, visiting is fine. You can come and visit, but you cannot stay. And unless you go through the right channels. I did not go through the right channels. They kicked me out. And that's the way it should have been. You know, and so I don't understand.
I sent people
why
up there
we're
once for work, and I did go through the right channels, had the appropriate letter of intent from that very same country, and the same, you know, the people that went up there, it was essentially, it was for like a network design and delivery thing. And they're like, why can't a Canadian citizen be qualified to do this job? Why do you have to send people from the United States to do it? Like, because it's not up to me. It's up to the senior executives that I work for, and I have a letter of intent. Ask them. Like, we're supposed to do a job. It doesn't matter. And they sent them back. They're like, nope.
Yeah.
Even if we're in the wrong on this, we're not letting you through until we see a court hearing or whatever. And I was like, send them back. I'm not going to fight you on it. Like,
they didn't give me, like, they didn't, you know, even though mine was a temporary visit, I didn't get to see a magistrate. I didn't get to see anything to kind of go, hey, can we fix this so I can stay?
Pass and go, no collecting $200. It was straight to international arrest warrant. Canadian mounted police will be crawling all over the place. Even the horses will have horseshoes on. It's going to be madness.
Dudley Do Right will apprehend me at some point.
I bet you they had killer poutine in the waiting room of the international arrest place that you go to. But because
I'm not a Canadian citizen.
I think to answer your question, it's because of the lackadaisical pushback on society's acceptance of social justice as the driving force in American economy and American politics today. I think, unfounded though it may be in almost every theater of operations by which they open their mouths on, and some of it's good, but you got to dig for it. Most of it's horseshit. I think that's why. I think that's why we don't handle things the same way, because people are enabled to have an opinion and society backs them up even when they're in the wrong, because they get shot down for stuff. And it's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. And I'm on every federal government list you could possibly imagine. Like, I had to go through unbearable hoops to get the TSA safe to travel thing, where they do an extra investigation. I've talked to the ATF formally on 6 or 7 occasions in the last 10 years with my blood type and eye color, and you know what I mean? Like, they've got absolutely every possible amount of research they can do on me or whatever. And it's still a fucking pain in the ass to get anything done, especially when it's with regard to international travel, as I've done a whole bunch of, and I'm about to embark on again in the fall. Yet and still, it's people take to the streets when people just show up whether they claim asylum or not, as their right to be here, and that we need to protect them against some evil king or dictator. And it's so perverse and backwards that it's very difficult to fathom.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You know, and the argument then gets shifted to, well, they're fleeing, like you said, some type of king or dictator, or in the sake of Mexico, the cartels.
Yep.
Which,
Very real threat.
okay, very real threat, but they're more of a threat at the actual border that they're trying to cross, or to border crossers. If you're living within the actual body of Mexico, there's probably more threats there than there are in the United States, and there's probably dangerous places. But there's a lot of dangerous places in the United States as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's Baltimore. There's Detroit. There's downtown LA.
There's Duluth.
Downtown New York.
Yeah.
There's Duluth, Minnesota. You know, there's Chesapeake Bay. There's all sorts of these, like,
New England, hard ass places,
yeah, yeah.
Martha's Vineyard, the streets there at night,
Yeah.
no bueno.
But there's literally places that are as dangerous with gang warfare.
Yeah.
You know, Chicago alone
Los
is
Angeles.
as dangerous. Yeah. So it's not that they're hiding, you know, that they're not coming for that reason. And that's obvious. You know, they're still, like, the amount of American travel to these areas in Mexico that are tourist zones, and then going outside of those into different villages. Sure, you're going to find trouble, but it's no different than walking from the bad side of Chicago, or the good side of Chicago, into the good side of Chicago, or bad side of Chicago. You just have to know where to go, right? So you're going to get robbed or beaten up or whatever in either of those places. It's not any more extreme,
I heard,
with their gangs down there than it is here.
I
So,
disagree.
like,
I disagree a little bit. I heard that in Chicago, if you are in the middle of winter, and you choose to get a Subway sandwich, you may in fact be jumped
3
by
a.m.
MAGA hat wearing people at 3 a.m. called racial slurs. And
when it's 15 below. Because I normally want a Subway sandwich at 3 a.m. when it's 15 below.
bro, nobody wants a Subway sandwich. Probably at all times of the day. Like, there's so many other options for you. You can get Jimmy John's, you can get Schlotsky's Deli, you can go places, is what I'm saying, for a grinder. You don't need to go to Subway at 3 a.m. in Chicago. So
No,
you're right. I'm obviously trolling pretty hard. And it's the same anywhere. Like, I saw that, aggressively saw that in Rome, Italy, and in Athens, Greece.
Yeah.
Athens was eye-opening, because if you're off that path track by one block, it is the most excruciating level of poverty, hustlers, street crime. Like, it's wild. One block off of, like, the usual tourist trap areas and stuff. It was pretty eye-opening to see that. And I was there in 2018, I think.
Yeah. My mom was she worked on a cruise liner that circulated from, like, basically the northern circle down through the British Isles into the Grecian Islands to the tip of Africa, and like where Egypt is, and then into Eastern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
For over a year, she went back and forth on that, right? So she'd pop out on her days off whenever they were in port in all of these different countries around the world. And she always, like, if she was in Turkey or in anywhere else, or she would have to understand where she was allowed to go and where she wasn't. And there were safe areas. There were safe areas where, you know, tourists or people who, you know, didn't live there, you know, could have safe passage, eat, go shopping, do all that kind of stuff, and then get back on the boat and be fine. And she said that it was, you know, very serious. Like, there was, you know, sometimes they'd have to send them with a guide, depending on what city that they were in there, you know, that
we joke about it a lot, we joke
So
about it a
why
lot,
is it
but
that
it's
everyone thinks,
yeah, like
Mm.
we joke a lot about it, but it's like, dude, I want you to have that same reckless passion that you're taking to the streets for to, demand whatever the hell it is you're demanding for open borders and everything else you're demanding, and try those in the countries that you're defending in your very argument. Go to Venezuela and try that out. Have a pride parade
Yeah.
in Saudi Arabia. Define where and what Palestine is, and then go out there and be an activist for freeing Palestine in their conflict. Like
Yeah.
the narrow-minded worldview of somebody who was born and raised here attacking capitalism while they're posting about it on their $2,000 iPhone while wearing Nike shoes and sipping on an $8 coffee is staggering. So try it out. Actually put your money where your mouth is and go make a difference in the world out there and see if their laws protect you the way that you're hoping ours will. It's funny to me.
But
Won't
they
happen,
also,
though.
that's the argument, is that they'll argue that, yeah, the things that we just explained that you can do in the United States and you can't do in those other countries is what they're running from.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not the case everywhere. And
there
also,
would be
there's
international disorder if the amount of asylum seekers were all truly that bad off from all the countries they're running from, infiltrating our borders from the south through Mexico.
especially when
should
most of the
warrant
demographic
world
most of
news
the
on a
demographic is men in certain age ranges. Most of the demographics, like
Funny how that works.
80%, you're leaving all the women and children behind. Sure, there's women and children coming over this border,
hello,
without
Cynthia.
a doubt, obviously, but the vast majority of them are men between the ages of like 15 and 45.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that are dramatically the highest amounts that are coming over our borders. So,
And these are numbers that are coming through congressional hearings. This is not just us pulling shit out of our ass, by the way.
right. Yeah. And so, and that being said, why then are you leaving the women and the children behind in the danger you say you're seeking asylum from? If you have left all of them, like what?
Right.
Like, the danger obviously isn't that bad if you're willing to leave your loved ones behind. And so, I don't know. Obviously, my stance on illegal immigration is very steadfast. I will never acquiesce to the idea that we shouldn't have borders. I will never acquiesce to the idea that we shouldn't have a standard of law within our borders, and that standard of law should apply to the citizens that are from here. Now, do I think that there should be a path and an avenue for people who want to embrace America as their new home, not come here and then create an enclave of their own and say, well, I'm not American, I just live here, and I'm not going to adapt at all to the country. I'm not going to adapt. That would be
I've had this very
ridiculous.
argument.
It's so ridiculous for me to go to any other country and go, I'm not going to learn any of their ways. I'm just going to live here and take from their social systems and just sit here and collect money and not actually adapt to their culture, their society, and not be appreciative at all of the country that provided me more freedom than where I came from. Instead, I'm going to burn things down. I'm going to demand things. I'm not going to learn the language. I'm not going to learn the customs or cultures. I'm going to be as petulant as I can in any other country. Pick a country, even Finland. I don't care if it's Sweden. If I went there and I didn't learn Swedish and I decided to do whatever I wanted and leak off their system or mooch off their system, it doesn't matter what the skin color is. It doesn't matter. I would not be welcome there, and I shouldn't be. Like, that's the thing.
I have a real professional example of this exact argument, very toned down. So there was a person at my place of employment, and this was during the era that that predates my remote work. So everyone's back in the chicken coop, right? This person was sort of spinning up all of the other coworkers around, we'll call it a lunch table situation. It wasn't, but for the sake of anonymity here a little bit, around the lunch table, so to speak, about just whipping everyone into a lather about the American education system not having applicable grants so that this person can continue master's level education with subsidies from the United States government, and thought it was super fucked up. And everyone's starting to buy into the narrative. Yeah, that's really bad. Well, why not? Blah, 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 and this and that. And how come? And on and on and on. And I'm biting my tongue until blood's coming out of my mouth. So quietly, I slip into the crowd and I was like, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, aren't both you and your marriage partner here on a green card? Well, yeah. What does that have to do with anything? Well, what it has to do with stuff is that you don't fucking pay into Medicaid or Social Security. So all the extra money that we have to pay out, you don't. So you should be able to buy your own class and go to night school if you want continued education, and likely why you're not eligible for a grant, right? Wait a minute, really? You don't have to pay those things? Well, no, I don't. But that's not the point. Like, but it is the point. Like you're vacationing here for work, more or less, on a limited time basis in a position of influence and authority in a big business setting, and you're whipping people into a lather that you're not getting subsidized federal government funding for continued education when you don't pay any of the requirements it takes to be an employee of this country, save for federal taxes. Am I wrong? No. Oh, okay. I would say buy your own textbook. And then I just sauntered the fuck off and everyone was like, yeah, buy your own textbook. So it's funny how the narrative can change with the right context. But I was like, I might get in trouble for this. But I kind of don't give a shit, because what are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in reality, am I wrong? Well, no. I'm like, you have so much more money than we do, in that you're not paying into any of the federal benefits systems that we are or have to. I don't get to not pay into Medicaid. I don't get to not pay into Social Security either. I'm issued a Social Security card. Them's the damn beans, man. I'm playing the cards I'm dealt and still managed to pursue an education. Can't you do the same thing? And my white ass didn't get any grants, by the way. Not to throw race into it all of a sudden, but just pointing it out. So, yeah, it was a fun conversation that I escaped narrowly with my life. But it's exactly that same narrative that you're touching on that I've experienced in a really toned down way. But that's how it's structured. And if you want to be here, go through the appropriate channels to become a citizen and be here. Nobody has a problem with that. So those are my thoughts too. Anyway,
I had a client named Rock, and Rock was it's so bizarre, but he was a like 6'5" or 6'6" Chinese fisherman who lived in Seattle. Actually, he lived in Bellevue, but he worked on fishing boats. Yeah, and he lived on fishing boats and worked on them. And he wasn't the brightest of guys. He wasn't. He didn't speak a lick of Chinese. He was oddly like basketball height Chinese, right? And his name was Rock, and that was his real name. So, nice. And he had come in from one of the fishing ventures. He got off the boat, and they get paid a ton of money, and then they come in, and so he was getting like a full back piece, and that went onto his hip and down his thigh. So it was this huge piece, and I spent a ton of time with Rock. Well, Rock found out, because he wanted to leave and go into a fishing boat that went up into Canada, that he couldn't get a passport. And he couldn't get a passport because apparently he was never a citizen. He's in his mid-20s and he never knew. His mother never told him. She wasn't a citizen, and he grew up here, went to school here,
sure,
his whole life, right?
Yeah.
had no idea. And in like the third session, he found this out. And so he goes, okay, well, I have to put the trip on and postpone it, but now I have to go through the citizenship class and to get naturalized, I have to actually become a citizen. So I kind of went through it with him. Like, you know, he was coming in like every week and giving me updates on basically the process of what he was going through. It took him about 3 to 6 months, somewhere in there. You know, this was many, many years ago, so I'm kind of vague on that.
Moving at the speed of the federal government's paper pushers, more or less.
Right.
Yeah.
But also at his own speed, because he was, you know, he wasn't really aggressively pushing hard, but he was getting stuff done. And he came back and said that he took the test and passed it, the citizen test, and he said that it was actually really easy. He said there was a few hard ones, but I think I pretty much aced it. And he did. He got like a 96 or 97% on it, right? So, and he did really well on it, and he was really happy, and he just ended up going through the right channels and becoming a citizen, and then he could go and do whatever he want. But he didn't make a big deal about it. He didn't make it like seem like he was being put into an oppressive situation, that he was like, nah, my mom just never told me, and she's a little nutty, and I'm sure she had her
It's a
reasons,
hell of a
'cause she
thing to
didn't wanna
find
get
out,
deported.
though. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, so somebody who was, he didn't even know a lick of Chinese. Like, he was just as American as it was. And that always kind of stuck with me. That always stuck with me with when people complain that it is too hard.
Well,
to become a citizen.
The other side of that too, if you score perfect results on your citizenship test, you think it's a little suspicious. Like, I'm going to put you on a list that you might be a spy. I think, like, you can't 100. Nobody gets why there's a crack in the Liberty Bell on the first try, my guy. Nobody.
But on top of that, like, what I was kind of leaning into on that one was that, like, that's kind of the complaint, that there isn't a speedier process into doing that. And I don't know if there should be a speedier process. I think that there should be a very tenuous process. I think there should be a process that is rigorous to kind of say, do you actually want to be here?
Right.
And I also don't like the idea of leapfrogging. Now, in the tattoo industry, I had a guy I've had people who, I have a deal. If you work for me for 5 years, I give you a bump in your percentage. And I had people work for me for, 5, 10, 5, 7, 10 years. And I had a couple of people that had been working for me for 4, and they were 4.5, almost there. And I had this guy, really talented guy, really great guy, but he'd only been working for me for 2 years. And he had some financial issues that he wanted to handle. And so he came to me and my manager at the time and said, hey, I'm better than all of them. And I'm not painting him as, this is what he actually said.
Yeah, this is the justification used for the argument of you should give me a bump and pay 2 years in advance of what our agreement was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he said, I deserve it. I bring a lot of money to the shop. I think that you make enough money because I did the math on how much money you make.
I love when people do that to me.
Oh, yeah. And I was like, and fortunately I had my manager there who handled all that. He goes, you don't know what you're talking about. Let me break down the numbers for you. And actually broke it down for him and made him look like a fool right in front of him. He's all, this man doesn't own a house. This man didn't have a car for 4 years because he couldn't afford to buy one. He's not making the money you think he is. But anyway, I digress. The situation was, he wanted me, he gave me an ultimatum. Either I'm going.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. He's like, either you're going to give me the bump and raise I need so that I can buy a house and so that I can actually move forward in my life, or I'm going to quit. And I went, okay, give me a day to think about it. And I knew what the answer was, but I just wanted to see if he thought maybe after we had talked that maybe he might back down a little bit, which he didn't. And I didn't. So when we came back to the table, I thought about it, and no, I'm not going to give it to you. And this is why. I don't think it's right that you should leapfrog over the people who put in the work.
Mhm.
that the people who have already earned this, that you got to earn it in less time just because you felt you deserved it. And furthermore, that the people who are almost there, that you just got to leapfrog right over the top of
That
them.
deteriorates the trust forever in your
Forever.
policy. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then it creates bitterness and resentment with the people who actually did put the work in. Like every other person who came here from another country and actually put the work in to become citizens because they wanted it. They wanted to live in this country for the benefits that this country gives its citizens. But to just take it, to just say I deserve it, or I'm different, I'm gonna go through a different path because I feel like it, or
Yeah.
I'm running from something. I don't care. Like, you need to do it the way that this country was set up to do, and you will reap the benefits of it, but only if you embrace the values of this country, if you embrace what America was designed to be. That's the only way you're going to do it. And any other way, you're just going to be a leech on the system. You're not going to find the American dream. You're going to find
The American
poverty
shortcut.
the American shortcut. Yeah, and it's gross. So, but anyway, that's how I feel about that.
Yeah. That went on much longer than I thought it was going to, but I kind of went off on a tirade there, so apologies.
That's okay. No.
Anyway, yeah, despite the Clearwater Law Group's fun word salad stuff, inquire to learn more. Their sales pitch. I'm interpreting the letter of the law a little bit differently with the Constitution. So, moving on, we got a couple more things going on. You had a bunch of stuff regarding America's favorite vacation spot. It's everyone's best kept secret. That's the South Pole, right? That's Antarctica down there.
Yeah.
What's happening? What's going on?
Well, what's happening is
It's time.
for Conspiracy
time.
Corner.
Yeah, let's do it. We're transitioning chat to Conspiracy Corner. If you're listening at
right.
home, put on your tinfoil hats for this segment. Here we go. I'm ready.
This segment is the land of the lost. Basically, Antarctica has been the hotbed, no pun intended, of basically
It's been a cold bed.
of so much speculation, and it is a breeding ground for all sorts of wonderful, rich conspiracy theories.
It has.
And but recently, as in this week, just a couple of days ago, there has been detected by a group of scientists who are stationed down there mysterious radio signals that are rising from Antarctica's ice. And it's baffling the scientists. They don't know where it's coming from. So this coming from Newsweek, and I heard about this through a couple of other news channels too. So, but this one seems to be the most kind of encompassing of as far as like the information of what the scientists are saying. So, mysterious radio signals detected emanating from Antarctic's ice have left particle physicists baffled. The pulses were detected by the Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, or ANITA, an array of radio instruments flown high above the southwestern continent via air balloon. So those tester air balloons they put up there and actually were testing for radio signals coming from below them. ANITA was designed to detect the radio waves generated when neutrinos from space hit the Antarctic ice, with the aim of learning more about the distant cosmic phenomena.
Okay, that was the question I was about to ask, is why were they flying balloons looking for radio waves? I get it.
Yeah. So in contrast, these strange new signals appear to be coming from below the horizon, a source direction that cannot be reconciled with our current understanding of particle physics. To reach the detector, the team explained, the signal must have traveled through thousands of miles of rock first, which should have attenuated it down to nothing. the radio waves that were detected were really steep angles, like 30 degrees below the surface of the ice, said paper author and physicist Stephanie Whistle. It's an interesting problem because we still don't actually have an explanation for what those anomalies are, but what we do know is that they're most likely not representing neutrinos. And
Most likely
perhaps
not.
Right.
Okay.
So perhaps the most ironic aspect of the discovery that Anita was launched over Antarctica in part because this remote location should limit the risk of interference from other signals. The team's analysis of the strange new signals ruled out the possibility that they were caused by neutrinos, regular cosmic rays, or any other particle-based signals. My guess is that some interesting radio propagation effect occurs near ice and also near the horizon that I don't fully understand, said Whistle. But we certainly explored several of those, and we haven't been able to find any of those yet either. So right now, it's one of those long-standing mysteries. The researchers are currently developing the next ultra-high energy particle detector, the payload for ultra-high energy observations, or PUEO for short. When PUEO launches, Whistle added, we should pick up more anomalies and maybe we'll actually understand what they are. We also might detect neutrinos, which would in some ways be a lot more exciting.
I think the PUEO sounds more exciting than the neutrino at this point, just for sake of argument. We should ask Dr. Stephanie there if she has been able to rationalize relativity with the current unprovable string theory, because those two things don't seem to match up the further you dig. But maybe that's a mystery too.
Right. So, but yeah, so interesting. There's radio waves coming up from the ice. And so this leads us into the idea of what is causing the radio waves.
Okay. What's your conspiracy theory on what's causing this?
Well, we've got a couple of we've got many options.
Oh, this
has been
nice. We got a menu.
So
let's go.
Yeah. So first is that it is from when the Nazis went down there and actually put a base down there, and that it was probably within a cavern, which is why they haven't been able to find it to this day. But there was a lot of traffic going from Argentina down there.
I was going to say,
Nazis.
Did they check Argentina routes by chance? Just no reason.
So, and during World War II, there was documented cases of the Nazis for some reason spending.
It started
a lot of time
with the letter A. I just guessed.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so there's that. There's
so we got the Nazi cavern theory,
right?
Okay.
And they left a radio behind, and it's a real strong one. So there's obviously aliens. There's been a lot of.
Wait a minute. What's powering the Nazi radio signals all these years later?
A very strong German battery.
Must be the most efficient German battery of all times. Likely developed by Volkswagen.
But yeah.
Again, just speculation here. That's why we have the tinfoil hats on. All bets are off.
That's right.
Okay, so omitting the battery problem, we have Nazi ice cave theory. What else we got? What else is going on down there?
So there's also, the obvious aliens.
Sure.
That there's always sightings of UFOs, and people speculate that there's alien bases down there. So
that one is more believable, don't you think, than the southwestern United States a little bit, except for the population. Like, there's just more per capita. Yeah. There's more reports of UFOs because of the population, but don't you think you'd be seeing weirder shit in Antarctica with borealises and meteors and all the kinds of shit you'd likely see if you're down there for some time? I would be more apt to believe they saw some weird shit down there than they do here.
That's true. Yeah,
anyway,
absolutely.
Okay.
I would also say, I think the aliens kind of ties in with like the pyramid stuff, which
Sure.
I've seen the pictures, but they look like dusted, pointy mountains to me. I've never seen a pyramid in that area that looks as if it's man-made.
Yeah.
You know, so but I'm also not an expert on pyramids, so I'm not going to say, you know, that the angles aren't
Sure.
unnatural.
But we've
So-
got some usual suspects. We have Nazi ice
Right.
cave theory, so the Red Skull's in there somewhere. We got little green men. What else we got?
Well, there's the either the kaiju or the titan aspect. That,
Talk to me. Go on.
There's, you know, ancient civilizations believe that there were titans that would rise up, and one of them would be under Antarctica. So you've got Titan theory that he's waking up, or you know, old gods theory, kind of you know,
Is this like
Cthulhu and
tangentially
such. So
related to Atlantis type of civilization? Is that what you mean?
kind of, yeah,
Okay,
a
gotcha.
little bit, yeah,
Sure.
for sure. So and but yeah, so there's the great titans, giants of old that are waking up, and you know, maybe he's humming under the ice there. Then you get into kind of the realms of flat Earth or hollow Earth, where the ice wall, you're not allowed to go past a certain point in Antarctica. They don't let you, you know, they go, oh, everyone can go down there and visit, but they actually don't let you past a certain kind of gated off area. And this one has a little bit of legs to it if you're willing to kind of go down that path of those. And the only reason is that if you look into Admiral Richard E. Byrd and his expeditions down there, which if you go to his wiki, he's got a lot. This man was a decorated, very ambitious and well-known military admiral. And he was probably one of the most decorated military admirals of all time. He was in he was in the American intervention in Mexico, World War I, World War II. He has Medal of Honor, Navy Cross, Navy Distinguished Service Medals, Legion of Merit medals, on and on and on. His medals keep going. Married with kids. He was considered to be one of the most high-ranking and established and respected admirals in all of military history.
Yeah.
And this guy, at the end of his kind of career after World War II, they put him on these kind of secret missions that he was going down to do exploration in Antarctica, and he was a pilot. So he would fly off the ship and fly into the interior of Antarctica, and he kept coming back and reporting that after a certain distance, the ice and snow stopped, and it became trees and tropics, and he was seeing animals and different fauna and flora that he'd ever seen before, and that he thought he saw a large like cavernous cave. And he went on to do multiple of these explorations, and then he at that point got kind of yanked from service, and he started going on television shows and doing, and you can actually find these on YouTube of him sitting on, I can't remember the name of the show, it was like the Spectroscope show or something like that, right? And
something
him just
that
sitting there explaining.
something that who's the actor that played Will Riker on Star Trek: The Next Generation? That guy.
Oh yeah.
Something that guy would have narrated if he were alive back then.
Probably,
Or like
yeah.
hosted?
So it was
Yeah.
actually more one of those, the early versions of like the Johnny Carson stuff.
Yeah. It was just
and they would sit there and smoke cigarettes on TV while they
Beautiful.
talked. And yeah, and so, and he went on to write tons of notes about this, and tons of like pamphlets about what he saw and what he documented down there. And then he went on TV and started talking about it to people, and shortly thereafter they yanked him off of that, and they kind of shut him up, and then he died. But right after that, there was a treaty, the Antarctic Treaty, that actually is established back in, it started in 59,
Mhm.
and then it went and it actually became effective on my birthday, June 23rd of 1961. And what ended up happening is like almost every country in the world got together in kind of a United Nations type of situation and all had a closed door discussion about Antarctica and what should be done about it after the revealings from Admiral Byrd's explorations. And they made a treaty and shut it off. No one's allowed to own it. No one's allowed to go down there. They aren't allowed to have any oiling. They know for a fact that there's a ton of oil down there and there's a ton of natural resources and minerals. And so they're like, okay, no one can touch them. It's off limits, and no one's tried. BP oil, no major oil company has even like tried to petition to try to go down there. There's never once been a time since 1961 that anyone said, "Hey, but can we get a contract? Because man, the world could use some oil right now, or the world could use lithium for batteries without doing massive devastation to any other area where we're getting lithium, like cobalt, all of these different things that come from those natural resources and the areas that they know have that within the rock structures of Antarctica, and the oil that they know is in there. No one's even bothered to try because they know that they're not allowed. And I mean, every country signed this.
Yeah.
It's insane. If you go to the Wikipedia page, the list of countries: Argentina, Australia, Austria, Belarus, Belgium, all the way down. There's probably, I think, 70 plus countries.
Real quick, did
signed
Germany
this.
sign it?
Let's see. It's in alphabetical. Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Are you buying stock on Admiral Byrd Island right now? Are you trying to build a
Yeah.
condo down there? You're buying in?
For sure, definitely. But for somebody to be as credible as that man, was, for him to go and make these type of like consecutive over many years claims,
Yeah.
there's probably something to it.
Look,
That's where my tinfoil hat doesn't come off, but I don't know what it was.
I'm a broken
don't know.
man, Lucky. I've been absolutely beaten to death by trust. Here's the two ways I'm thinking about it. On the one hand, if the earth is round, then how come the bottoms of my shoes are flat, right? On the other hand,
That's very true.
We just talked about the government saying, nah, most of what you've heard is us just feeding the narrative and then keeping the bullshit storm going. There's none of this is real.
Oh yeah.
So I wonder if back then, post World War II, and everyone's recovering and stuff, and it's been a minute, if all the countries of the world were like, the Nazi stuff, right? The Nazi ice cave or the base that they had, we can't let that happen again, right? So because of the, who knows, availability of strategic importance to the rest of the world versus maybe let's not fight over this landmass because it's kind of a wasteland, and while there's a ton of natural resources down there, we just don't. And we certainly don't want to give anyone the upper hand to just go do it if another world war erupts like we saw Article A, Germany, so y'all have to sign this shit too. Show a good faith. Perhaps that could have been one of the unspoken driving reasons behind that. I don't know. I mean, or there could be Nazi ice caves, dinosaurs, flora and fauna of unknown origin, and radio waves coming out of there. I don't know the answer, but I am so beaten by the back and forth and we feed the narratives because it keeps people buzzing about shit that we can detract from and do other stuff that they just got done saying about all the alien stuff after admitting that aliens were real, whatever that was, 2023, 2024.
Counter that. Right. But to counter that.
It's hard for me to buy any stock on Admiral Byrd Island at the moment. Like, I may,
on that, but
we'll follow it up, dude. I might get it like a summer vacation home down there and like timeshare it a little bit, but I'm not actually building yet. That's not where I'm building.
But as a month ago, think about this though.
Yeah.
To counter that argument, a month ago, they just uncovered documents in Argentina that Hitler did survive, and he actually did move to Argentina and fathered many children.
So like,
and that came out from the Argentinian government.
Yeah.
Like that came out from unsealed documents from their government.
Who
because
has
that
those
new-
documents now?
They do. They
Oh,
still
okay.
have them. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was actually that new president. I forget what his name is. He's got the long kind of hipster hair,
Yeah.
and he's like slashing all of the. He's like super conservative,
Mhm.
and he's just like opening the floodgates to the freedom in Argentina.
He's trying to one up the us declassifying JFK shit and being like,
Yeah.
Hitler though.
Yeah, right. But that just happened like a month ago.
Now
So,
that's
like-
something I would love to do a deep dive on. Truly.
Yeah,
Like, cause
yeah. Let's do it.
I with the evidence provided me by
Right.
television and the internet. The hat's still on,
Right.
guys. I can say whatever the
Yeah.
fuck I want. Um, I'm willing to believe that there were some Third Reich echelon that made it to South America, particularly in Argentina. There are today
right.
a bunch of German towns that miraculously weren't there before the 40s.
Yeah, a lot of Bavarian
Really
looking
weird how
buildings
that
in
works.
that area.
Like,
Yeah.
wow, your history just stops right here? Shit, how did that happen? But Hitler making it all the way out
Right.
there? I mean, that's something I'd love substantially more
I mean, they had
conversation,
that-
evidence, movies,
They had that
all
History
kinds of
Channel
stuff.
show that went on for a couple of years of like finding
Yeah.
Hitler or searching
No,
for Hitler
yeah,
or
yeah,
something
yeah.
like that. And they
I
followed
watched
that
a bunch of
trail.
those and I was like, really though? Like very dramatic and fun to watch. It was a popcorn watch
And
for
it-
sure, but
Right. And it ended with obscurity. It
Yeah.
ended with like ambiguity of like
the same
who knows?
decorated
Could be.
colonel in our Navy that saw the pill floating around in one of the routine ops that spoke to Congress a year and a half ago on UFOs being real and all his
Right.
citations and shit. He just had at least grainy footage, whereas our Antarctica spelunking admiral of old did not,
Right.
which is unfortunate.
Right.
All we have are radio waves, we think, that are definitely not refractions from outer space, which is why we were there studying the pulses in the first place.
Yeah.
I want more. I'm crunching the hat down tighter. I need more, dude. I just don't have it. I'm broken.
I know. I'm the Mulder here. You're the Scully.
Yeah,
And
it
so
seems.
like that's and that's kind of what this segment is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to drag you along, and the Mulder in me wants to believe, but
We need a
But I'm
drop
also-
for X-Files, but I know we'd get ripped off the internet for using that. You know. Yeah.
Right. So, but yeah, it's just fun to think about.
Yeah.
I really do not subscribe to probably 80% of this stuff. Do I trust the government ever? No, obviously.
But a
That's-
doctor scientist person said,
yeah, I never appeal to authority. And so I'm always questioning everything. And if it definitely pulls me in a direction that kind of logically makes sense, then I'll kind of tug on that string a little bit. But if it doesn't, sometimes
that's
I
what
still
makes
just like
these
to play around
so-
in the weeds.
that's what makes these so delicious, doesn't it? Like
Yeah.
that it's rooted in plausibility and extreme logical digression where you're like, you have obviously, of course there's weird dinosaurs with radio antennas and sharks with freaking laser beams in hollow earth beyond the wall we're not allowed by treaty to go see, so no one can answer the question because of the governments. In Antarctica, it's all right here. Like,
Right. Yeah. Where's
Okay.
the yeah.
so
that's-
among the prevalent conspiracy theories ascribed as possibilities, are you going with little green men, Nazi ice caves, or what was the other one? Hollow Earth?
Hollow Earth. I don't think I'm going with any of them. I'm thinking I'm going with probably creaking ice plates underneath the rock.
Yeah, I hate
So-
to sell all the stock before I close on it, but I'm gonna take off the hat and say I think it's horseshit. And here's why I think it's horseshit. Not because it's 105 degrees and a tinfoil hat is hard to wear for longer than 13 minutes. The reality is, when Mount St. Helens blew, they were finding like ash particles in Russia and stuff that they were attributing
Right.
to, this thing hit the jet stream, weather patterns dispersed this volcanic ash all over the place. Similar things can be dated through Herculaneum and Pompeii and stuff like that, all over places that were far outreaching. I would imagine if we had such a mixture of ice cold on top, super hot, hollow earth, ecosystem, Atlantis type of shit on the bottom, there would be signs of this isn't right somewhere in the world besides that landmass, in my opinion. Something somehow would have blown through the weather pattern and the sands of time for us to send a joint international scientific exploration from stem to stern all over that place, because they are allowed to go down there, you said, right? Like the science community can go, but like
Oh yeah.
no one can settle it, lay claim to it, drill oil for it, all that stuff, right?
They're allowed to go within a certain mileage of the border of the continent. So they're not allowed to go past a certain point due to danger, is what they say. It's too dangerous to go past a certain point.
Well,
so
I mean, I
within
think
miles.
there are like parts of Antarctica that are colder than the surface temperature of Mars in certain parts of the year and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So like definitely believable on that front, but I mean, we have the technology. Turn those radical telescopes toward Earth and take pictures of Antarctica. Do all that stuff. Shoot some X-rays at it. I don't know.
I've changed my mind. I'm going with kaiju.
It's the Titan.
Yeah, I think it's a Godzilla level type of monster.
I need that to be true. Yeah,
Yeah.
I really need it. That's a fun one, man.
They did explore Antarctican pyramids in the first Alien versus Predator movie.
Yep.
The pyramids were actually like
that's the one where the predators use Earth as a training ground, right? That movie.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I saw that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And then if the dude fails, he just nukes all of everything that would lead back to these things exist at all with that little arm thingy yeah.
Yep. So but I'm going kaiju.
Okay.
So that's my goal. That's my bet.
All right.
Kaiju. So it's whistling under the ice is what it's doing.
I'm going to continue to wear flat bottom shoes, although I'm going to bet the earth is still round. So I'll take the low road, unfortunately.
Okay. What else you got?
That was it, really. We got some pop culture to talk about. You had some thoughts on Arlington Road. I wanted to clap back a little bit on Mobland because I finally finished it since last time we formally spoke about it on the internet.
Let's hit Mobland.
Yeah, super quick. It's incredible. Like, it took some turns that were quite predictable. It took one turn that was not predictable. In learning who the father was, that kind of popped out sort of at the last minute where I was like, oh shit. But just how fast it explores, like it starts to pull the narrative out on this family and how fast it explores just how batshit crazy that Helen Mirren's character and
Maeve.
And Pierce Brosnan's character actually is staggering. And I love it. Like from a like this is sick like storytelling perspective, it was super duper good, man. But the characters really make that show for me. The plausibility of a modern day mafia war going on in the streets of London at the affective level that they're displaying it seems unreasonable, but the amount of theater involved in telling that story through these characters is wonderful. Like, is so well done. So yeah, I jammed through that in like a day and a half after we talked. I think I spent a whole weekend with it on in the background while I was doing stuff around the house, and I was like often standing there for like a half an hour glued to the TV, and I would just grab some chips and sit back down for a few more minutes. Like, it was really good, dude. So I'm all in. The Prestige TV in aggregate is it's a really good time to like television right now. Just gonna say,
Yeah, oh yeah.
like, there's
Well,
so much good stuff out there. But Mobland, 2 thumbs up, man. I'm saying we're, because of Guy Ritchie and some other flavorful pieces. Love Pierce Brosnan, love Helen Mirren. We're in the 9 meg category for season 1 for me. So
Solid. That's where I was too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did a rewatch with Erin. Erin finally caught up, and she
What'd
was
she
just
think?
like, "Oh, dude, she was glued. She
Yeah.
she didn't want to be. She didn't want to be at work. She was just like, I just want to go home and watch Mobland."
Did
I
she
was
get
like,
into
"Yeah."
Landman by chance?
She did. She has not yet.
Oh,
And
man, she's gonna love
That's
it.
the next one I'm gonna hook
Yeah.
her on. The similarities between kind of the overarching theme of like a man who's stuck with a bunch of lunatics
Mhm.
whose whole job and existence is to clean
Untangle
up
the
their
wires
messes,
at every turn.
untangle right. Very similar in regards to kind of like just different setting and different occupation, but overall like kind of very similar in like the stress levels that each one of those dudes had to go through.
And I think the streamers particularly have tapped into that en masse, and I think they've figured some stuff out, right? Because gone are the days of the 4x3 shot sitcom in 30 frames per second with a laugh track, right? And that's all that we had on television up until we got into the expansion of cable to the degree that it expanded. You had music television and a whole bunch of stuff in music pop culture that was piped right into your TV at home. You had shortly after that in the early, like, end of the 2000s into the 2010s was like the absolute explosion of reality television, which is my least favorite television genre. You had Survivor and every fucking variant of that. And then you had like these long form drama pieces that were kind of popping up, like Lost comes to mind. That was like a big phenomenon and stuff. And now, to your point, this let's follow the protagonist from a 360-degree view of how fucked up his world is and all the different interactions he has with these characters that are absolutely unmanageable for the average person. Like, clearly, if it were you and I, we would have had a meltdown by now. Like, oh fuck, you know what I mean? Like, but because they're so relatable on every individual point, to some degree, it's just super entertaining to watch. And I agree with you. I think we're seeing it in all kinds of stuff. The Bear, which I haven't really got a whole bunch into, but like Landman for sure. Even The Gentleman to a huge degree.
Yeah.
Also Guy Ritchie. A lot of that stuff, and it's super bite-sized. It's fun to watch. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, fully.
Yeah.
I did actually, before I get into the next one, I forgot to mention on Father's Day, I got to go to the movie. Me and the wife, the kids didn't even bother coming with us, but we went and saw Ballerina, and
Yeah.
it was so good. My wife didn't fall asleep.
Yeah. Wow.
And she,
Nice.
yeah, dude, she was glued. She loved it, and it was so, dude, you were so right. Some of the creative kill scenes,
Yeah.
were incredible. The storyline felt organic. It didn't felt forced. It felt like it was part of that universe because they had just enough of the other characters,
Mhm.
but not too much, and gave her own, room to breathe within that storyline.
Well, and we understand the function of the ballerinas within the Ruska Roma. I think I called it Buddha Ruska last week, which is an excellent Thai restaurant in Seattle I used to eat at. The Ruska Roma. Sorry, I often do this show on no sleep. But it was cool because I was always like, well, the ballerina thing, is that their affront to the gangster lifestyle? No, they serve a legitimate we kill people purpose too, which I thought was wonderful to explore that whole theater side of their family, so to speak, under the table, right? I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, and it gave you a whole different like look into, because the one thing that I always took issue with, that I ignored pretty quickly because of how great the movies are, but the one thing that never really made sense to me in the John Wick films is like, is everyone just an assassin, and are they just fighting each other? Like, what context do they have to the real world? Do they have any context or connection to regime changes or political assassinations, or they're taking out like corporate leaders or whatever? They just seem to be inner fighting with themselves, and the hits are always on themselves.
The point is that they can't figure that out, because there's a scene in one of the John Wicks where it takes place in Rome, Italy, so it had to be the second one, I think. Anyway, he goes
Yeah.
on location, and the manager of the Continental in Rome, first question in Italian, "Are you here for the Pope? Like, are you here
Right.
to kill the Pope?" And he's like, "No." And he's like, "Okay, cool." So like it would allude to the fact that they do hits to that degree that interface with real life, but then
Right.
the whole rest of the franchise is like every single human being on the street, "TikTok, Mr. Wick," they're all waiting to kill this guy. You know what I mean? We're like,
Yeah.
how are there so
The-
many of you?
The page goes out and the whole restaurant looks at their phone, and it turns out everyone in that
Like,
general
everyone?
restaurant. Yeah.
Which
right.
it,
It's
it
a-
keeps pulling you back out of like keep suspending disbelief and just have fun, which I think they didn't figure out, and it's still fun that they haven't in some degree because
Right.
there's elements of both. What did you think of the Gabriel Byrne side of things under the table? They're like the Malkavians, so to speak, of
Right.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it
Like
was,
what's going on here? Cool, right?
The Masquerade did come to mind while I was watching it too. So because it was definitely a pardon me, a different bloodline of
Yes.
that were a little nutty and the cult version of what was actually going on. But they were like, don't mess with those guys. And
Yeah.
I loved it. I love that aspect of it that
I love the
there was
aspects
a-
and the celerity of it. Wait a minute. What?
But yeah.
It's funny. Bloodlines 2 is, after being in development since 2016, is being announced for late 2025 for PC gamers. So I cannot wait. Because it's been a fucking 20-year journey to get this video game out. Anyway, I've been
Is that a
doing.
Masquerade video game?
Yes, sir. It's number 2. The first one came out in 2004. And
For computer?
yep.
Is it PC only?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So
I think your cell phone has enough power to run it though these days, but
wow. Okay.
like excellent story. Mechanics were 2004, but the story was unbelievable, just like the game for a D10 based system. But the second one looks sick, and it's a fictitious interpretation loosely based on what they're calling the city of Seattle. So I can't wait.
Oh, wow.
I cannot wait to
So-
play it if it comes out.
I feel like we might need to bring the audience in on this. We
Yeah.
are talking about Vampire the Masquerade.
Vampire the Masquerade.
And what-
Yeah.
So it is a tabletop RPG game that we used to play when we were younger,
Yep.
and in a group where it was like
It's like
basically
Dungeons and Dragons, exactly, but it's a D10 and not a D20 based dice system, so things are more story driven than they are action or chance driven. But it's the same
there's-
game, basically.
And there's different vampire houses and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Really fascinating. They actually made a TV series called
I heard about
Mas-
that, and I read that the dude died in a motorcycle accident, like on episode 3 or some shit, and it was like,
Yeah.
we're scrapping this bitch.
Yeah, they did one season, and I used to
Oh, a
own
season. Okay.
it. Yeah, they did a whole season, and but yeah, it was like in the early '90s
Yeah.
that they did that. So, but yeah, so the video game that he's talking about is based off of this role playing game that we used to play. So I was
Yeah.
actually very surprised to hear this. So
Anyway,
just to
yeah.
bring everybody up to speed, because I was like, we're getting in the weeds here, and we haven't explained what we're talking
Good,
about.
good call
So-
out. Good point of order. That was exactly what I thought of when I was watching that. I just didn't mention it because you hadn't seen it. But it was like,
Right.
bro, he feels like he's not part of the Camarilla, whatever this house is out here. Like he's
Right.
playing by the same masquerade rules. But I wonder if the producers had a 3rd edition Rose book when they wrote this, because like it's thematically very similar. I know they're worlds apart, but that was the only way I could describe that. Was like, oh, they're like crazy Malkavians out there doing weird shit.
Yeah.
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 I don't know what's
So-
going on here. But I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. It was a fun movie though,
Oh
right?
yeah, it
Yeah.
was fun. Yeah, we had a blast. It was a good time, and yeah, I'm very glad we went to go see that one. So,
Yeah.
but for the next one,
Yeah.
I actually have to put the hat back on.
Okay. I've done a
So-
little homework on this today. I've got a
Yeah.
couple of key static notes here, but go on. Let's lead us in with what we're talking about.
Okay, so the movie I'm about to review is actually a movie from 1999, and it is called Arlington Road, and it stars Jeff Bridges, Tim Robbins, Joan Cusack, and I remember seeing it right after it came out
Mhm.
in '99, and
Huge
it
fucking
was direct-
movie year, by the way. Matrix.
oh yeah, '99
episode
was
1,
it,
like Fight Club, I
it's
think.
actually known as Fight Club.
Yeah.
It was actually known. 99 was known as the far and away the best cinematic year ever.
I would agree.
And so look into it. There's actually whole like pages and documents and
unbelievable movies came out in 1999.
Yeah, there was a pinnacle year for cinema. But this came out that year, and I remember seeing it right after it happened. And having grown up the way I did in the woods, and like I did a senior paper on the Oklahoma City bombing. Like my senior paper was on that, and so and so this movie is about, and I had wanted to rewatch it, especially after like COVID started, and I really started kind of going down and looking at all of these different movies that were kind of conspiratorial,
Not you.
right? So Arlington Road was a movie about an FBI agent who, him and his wife were both agents, and she passes away in an FBI related incident, and he is a single dad now, and he's gone to go teach, and basically he teaches at a college classes about
Domestic terrorism
and domestic terrorism cells, white supremacist cells, and other types of groups of domestic terrorism. And he's kind of actually sympathetic more to the constitutionality of these people rather than the overreach of federal agencies that spy on their people against the constitutional authority and that go in and muck things up. And they talk about the bombing, like they kind of fictionalize real events, like it's the St. Louis bombing instead of the Oklahoma City bombing and such, right? So, and he is going into the exploration of this. Well, the movie starts out with him actually driving down the street, and there's a kid who'd blown his hand off or close to it, hurt his hand really bad with a firecracker that he didn't know this kid, and he picks him up, takes him to the hospital. Well, it turns out that it was the neighbors that had just moved in directly across the street, their son. And it was like, they've lived here for a couple of months and I don't even know their names. I didn't know the kid's name, didn't know their name, and how you don't know your neighbors, right?
Yep.
And it's Tim Robbins and Joan Cusack are the neighbors. And he comes through the series of the movie, you come to find out that Tim Robbins isn't who he says he is. And being an ex-FBI agent, it starts to tickle his brain. Like, wait a minute, you're getting mail for this other guy who happened to grow up in the same town you did for an alumni thing.
Yep.
Like, the pieces aren't adding up. And so he starts to dig into it, and he starts to realize that this guy is part of a terrorist cell that no one believes him. His girlfriend doesn't believe him, who's his ex FBI partner doesn't believe him. No one believes him. They all think that he's going crazy, and Tim Robbins is playing right into it and pushing him into it to make him think he's crazy. Well, it turns out that the incident where his wife died, who was an FBI agent, they modeled it, and they admitted in we watched the extras even, and they fully admitted it that it is completely modeled after Ruby Ridge.
Ruby Ridge, right? Yep.
Yeah, and so the Ruby Ridge of this is something Creek, a synonym for Ruby Ridge. So, and the details were slightly different, but it was basically to show that the overreach of the feds on this family that may not have been super government friendly, may not have been happy with the government at all, and did things unorthodox as a family. Like, it still gave the government no right to do what it did.
Yeah,
and
the way I understand the description is they sort of paint the characters to be similar, where they see eye to eye on stuff like government overreach, both the protagonist and the antagonist and stuff like that. But one would be painted more toward radical conservatism and the other one would be a little more progressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Okay.
so there is definitely
That's like
a
literally the
progressive-
only common ground between them kind of deal.
right. And
Yeah.
the the tone of the movie is definitely leans more liberal, but it does not it let them escape from guilt.
Sure.
And it does not let the government escape from guilt. And it does paint a picture of how things get framed and how people get framed for things that they did not do. And it does it very, very well. It is a very tight thriller. It has very little wiggle room for discussion on how things operated through it, and there is a surprise ending, and it's great. It's a wonderful movie. However, the movie aside, and I highly recommend everybody watch it. I give it probably about 8 megs, 7.5 megs to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely watch it because it's fascinating to kind of see how, if you compare it to like the Gretchen Whitmer FBI kidnapping case, if you compare it to Waco, to Oklahoma City, if you compare it to J6, if you compare it to any of these events where the federal government and the feds were involved, whether it was during the Janet Reno era or not, or up to modern
This
times.
movie is a fictionalized expose on their playbook.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That being said, good luck trying to find it,
Yeah.
because during 2020, I looked for it. I remember that movie, and I had done it before. I had done it in the years previous because I remembered the movie. I was like, oh yeah, I wonder. And so I'd search for it. Never came up on any streaming service. And even if you went to try to rent it on Amazon, it just says not available. Cannot find it. And so I was like, well, that's odd. Okay, maybe it's just wasn't that popular enough of a movie that they really kind of pursued it for streaming. But then as time went on, I kept trying. A year later would go by, 2022, I'm looking again. No, it's not anywhere. I can't find it. Did it again in 2023. Looked again. It just kept, it doesn't exist. You cannot find it.
I'm going to hit you right in the tinfoil hat on this one.
Yeah?
It is found in the libraries of Netflix and is also unavailable.
Yeah.
Like, you can pull it up and it's like,
it pulls up.
Remind me or notify me if this is available. And their answer is like, could maybe sometimes, but not always be available in some regions, but not others, but totally not available right now. And I was like, that's weird, because that means they took it out of the library for viewability. Not that, because it doesn't even have the movie poster on the thumbnail. It does have the description, the date, the director, the release information, the rating, and the description of things. But I started to do a little looking on it, and number one, the release of this film was pushed 6 months because it's about to come out immediately after the Columbine shooting. And there's apparently an opening scene with a kid with a gun and stuff. And then when it was released theatrically, it just kind of barely made back its money. But even before it hit the screen, it was sold to a company that was bought by Universal that sold it to somebody else that belonged to Sony that was finally released by Screen Gems. And they just kind of barely made the money back in its theatrical run or whatever. And they're everywhere I look, they're citing, well, some of the copies didn't make it past, like, you can buy it on Blu-ray and you can buy it on DVD if you can find a hard copy of it. But there are no digital copies that anyone's aware of anymore that are found in anyone's library. And I was like, well, that's strange, because wasn't that like the wildest movie year in Hollywood's history for American film? I mean,
Sure was.
it predating the, I would argue, predating the digital effects evolution and digital cameras evolution. 1999 on film stock, it was the greatest pinnacle movie shot on film year that was released anyway. Obviously, these were shot from 96 to 98 before they were released or whatever. The best movie year of all time for on film stock film, in my opinion. And it is odd to me that just this one also does not get transcribed into a digital format anywhere, except for one outlet in Canada, I think the guy said. And I'm hearing this from an interview on YouTube from the director that was trying to recount some of the stuff from back then. It was like, yeah, no one really I don't know, it went to the distributor and then they did some shit, and obviously it did get out in a digital format, but where all those went, I don't know. And it's
Yeah.
like, do you? Do you?
Ultimately, I went down to Entertain Mart here in town,
Uh-huh.
and they have a gigantic DVD library. And I was like, I wonder. And I went digging through the A's in the, suspense thriller section, right? And sure enough, for $4, I found a hard copy.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't play on certain newer digital DVD players.
Really?
I had to get a new DVD player, Blu-ray
no
player
way.
and then it finally played, but like it wouldn't play on other ones.
Then it plays
So,
once and self-destructs. Like, what?
yeah, it's all like a Mission Impossible.
Smoke tufting out of the machine. What happened?
So yeah, they don't want you seeing this movie, and by they, I don't know who they are, but
Sure.
I would imagine that this movie would be an indictment from Hollywood about the flubs and whoopsie daisies of the federal agencies, the three-letter agencies, and they do not want that narrative to be a clarion call to the public. And they are known for curtailing certain things. And I mean, any movie that has anything to do with the military, they 100% have advisors on the set going, you can't say that, you can't do that, that's not okay, this is okay. So they do absolutely go, this particular movie sheds a bad light on think about if anybody watched this movie during or before or after the J6 situation or the Gretchen Whitmer situation, they would all be going, hey, it's like the movie, they're doing the movie thing.
Well,
and so
yeah, like it's a not as popular film in 1999 that did have a theatrical run and whatever. It was not as
it was a big movie,
driven as some of the other ones. Yeah, from that year, but it definitely came out. And I think, I wasn't very mature enough to see it from adult eyes as much back in 1999 as I would be looking back. But pop culture was very alert to all of the what's going on with the government versus the people in all of these situations. Oklahoma City, Ruby Ridge, all these things. And that was before 9/11, right? Like then shit got ramped up with all the Homeland Security Act to unbelievable degrees. And then we get into the, you fall down the line, you get the Edward Snowden stuff and all the, WikiLeaks and all the shit. And you're just like, holy shit, what have these guys been doing and for how long? I would imagine there'd be other things they'd want to censor if there was some secret censorship organization behind the scenes, but this one's too delicious to ignore. I'm pretty good at finding shit on the internet, or where to find shit if it's not on the internet. And I'm with you, man. Like, people do not want this publishing ran in a streaming format where it's watchable ad nauseum for reasons that remain unclear.
Here's my next unicorn.
Okay.
Max Headroom. Now, if anyone remembers who Max Headroom was, in the early to mid 80s, 84, 85, 86, somewhere around there, they did, I think, 2 seasons. And it was a television show, and he ended up doing Pepsi commercials. And I think the actor Matt Fuhrer, like I always forget how to pronounce his last name, was the guy who played Max. And he was like this television screen, and he was like a super like 80s television screen guy, and he looked like plastic.
Mm-hmm.
But he was the voice for, it was set in the future, and he was the voice of like that no one knew who was behind it, but of this revolution against the government. And it was kind of weirdly fun, but prophetic in a weird way.
Yeah. Can't
find it. Does not exist. I want to watch this series so much. That's my next unicorn, is to find Max Headroom. And it was weird because of how outside of his show, how popular he was, because he was this like spokesperson for Pepsi for a while. And so, like, it was one of those things where he had made such a cultural touchstone within the American, culture that, like,
Mhm.
he was a big deal. And then now you can't find it. Like, that doesn't make it. It's like taking, like, not being able to find Alf. Like, Alf being just
Yeah,
completely
and
removed out of the ethos.
so some of the
And
things it's pretty passable to believe that the publishing and distribution rights got absolutely like tied up in legal for the rest of time. We have, media outlets from Hollywood in the late 90s dissolving left and right, being bought up by other interested parties. The rise of the, Fox, Universal, all this stuff owning all these other small, Sony's another big one and stuff. It's not uncommon to be like, well, we don't have distribution, or it's messy, or it's whatever, and we're not putting it out, whether it's in the vault or not. But some of the stuff that ought to be readily available, like what you're describing with this series and also this movie, is baffling to me, especially in a year where damn near everything released in 1999 is considered a Criterion classic at this point, that you can get on almost any streaming service. If you have a credit card, Amazon should be able to call it up and at least rent it to you. And I can't find it
Absolutely.
anywhere either. It's not on Roku. It's gone. Like, it's just
Yeah.
gone. But there
what's
are
crazy
reviews
is I was actually,
from that time period of like critic reviews you can watch about the show on the internet.
right.
Like, people were talking about it. I watched one from Australia. They were like the Siskel and Ebert type of knockoff show,
Yeah.
but it was a guy and a girl. There's a bunch of internet people that are like 7 to 10 years ago that put up a review on a really shitty camera about it, trying to do the same thing for an internet show. Like, people
Yeah.
were aware of this film.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw it. I was working in the movie theater,
Mm.
Grass Valley Cinemas, when this movie came out, and we actually watched it as a crew together in the theater.
Mm.
And so I saw it in the movie theater, and then I saw it again multiple times on, VHS or DVD, depending on the situation. But, like, yeah, I mean, it almost was like this movie just disappeared.
Yeah.
And it's very, very odd to me, considering the subject matter. Like, if it was like, the Mandela effect of that Sinbad genie movie,
Mhm.
Shazam, which I absolutely remember seeing, but of course, according to the Mandela effect, it doesn't exist. But I have actual memories of watching it. This isn't like that. It was obviously there. There's reviews of it. You can pull the picture up on IMDb right in front of me.
Mhm.
It existed. You just can't.
You're just not allowed to watch
have
it.
access.
It
You
seems.
just don't have access to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's just no access to it. Whether or not you're being denied access, or there's just a reason why that isn't being explained. Like, if you look it up and go, why can't you find Arlington Road? There's no, like, legitimate answer. Like, it just doesn't come up anywhere. So,
Well,
and
it is weird that the only detraction I might take is it would be weird that something like this would be called off, right? Like, if there was some driving force calling off the ability to have access to a film like this for whatever reason. Whereas nowadays, a dissenting opinion or the truth, even en masse, can just outright be dismissed by the public and the governments and the World Health Organizations as, oh, they're just anti-vaxxer weirdos, right? And they're just crazy. But then, Harvard's publishing studies about, actually, no, most of the people were right, and you guys were intentionally deceptive with all your practices around this COVID stuff. So they don't pull the whole "you can't see this anymore" playbook, or we're redacting all of the studies and information. They just blatantly say you're wrong because you're stupid and we know more than you. So it's like a way different attack pattern to obfuscate the truth, if there's truth to that, being the Hollywood dramatized blueprint of what the government does, right? Like, if we're really to take a helicopter view of it, there's just two different dissenting attack patterns on the same philosophical truth or adjacent truth or whatever you want to look at. But yeah, it is odd to me. I'm willing to buy a little real estate on Arlington Road. Probably not the cul-de-sac. Probably toward the middle of the street somewhere. Maybe a 1-bedroom, nice cottage. But I can't find this movie anywhere, and I know it exists, and I'm watching reviews about it. I'm seeing clips from it in the reviews about it, and I can't have access to this film either unless I, like you, find a hard copy of it somewhere on a Blu-ray and hope that my Blu-ray player reads the file, I guess. So I may never see this movie.
Well, I'll bring it down with me when I come down there. So
That'd
we
be
can watch it
fun.
and
I mean, I think my Xbox plays Blu-rays. Hopefully it works in that machine, but we'll try it out.
unless it gets confiscated by airport security on my way through.
That's possible, dude. They're like, is that Arlington Road? Cuff him.
Yeah.
What? Why?
This is contraband. So
International arrest warrants are going back out. The Canadians are popping up out of nowhere.
we're
That's
sending you
him.
back to Canada.
That's the tattoo guy from 5 years or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what's kind of funny in the like technology realm of my life? I don't know how. I think it was because I had to reload Windows 11 on something, and it came with an installed disk, which is very unusual because most of those distributions come from download this file to a readable thumb drive, boot it from your thumb drive. That saves a ton of money in physical media. Everyone has a thumb drive lying around somewhere, right?
Right.
I don't have a single optical drive on anything I own. Not my car won't take a CD. My truck won't take a CD. My computers won't take a CD. I have nothing that will play physical media except for my Xbox.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wonder if I could rig up I know I can just download a copy of Windows 11, put it in a boot drive, and feed it the actual key that I own, and it will think it came from a disk, a drive. It doesn't matter. As long as the key unlocks it, it'll install, right? I know I can do that, but I'm challenging myself in this moment. Like, God, could I rig my Xbox up to be my CD-ROM drive for my computer? Like, how could I run a software program just to see if I could run physical media now? But it's hilarious because I don't own a device at all that does not have digitized media in 2025. Not one, except for the Xbox. I don't own anything else. I was like, God damn, that was like 6-7 years ago. You couldn't think about buying a PC without a disk drive in it. Got to play CDs. What if I have to burn a disc?
Yeah.
So it's crazy how that's just slowly evaporated from my technology acumen in modern times, you know?
Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah.
So
crazy though.
But yeah. So that's my review of Arlington Road, and now my next unicorn is to find Max Headroom. If anybody out there listening has this
hit us
available or knows where to find it. I tried to it looked like you could watch it on YouTube, and I went to try to find it on YouTube, and you could see that there was episodes there, but you couldn't watch them. It just said that they were not watchable. And so I was like, oh, okay, why not? Like, why, so I'm going to go try to find hard copies, and see if I can get those. I still have a pretty extensive DVD and Blu-ray collection because I'm a tangible hard copy kind of guy. But and when all the lights go out, I'll have the generator cranked up and the TV attached to it. And
you're not the guy I'm worried about digging around for years on end in a landfill trying to find your hard drive that contains your Bitcoin wallet decrypting key. I'm not worried about you at all.
I make a modular to hook up to the Bitcoin satellites so that we can trade for chickens and eggs and yeah.
Well, I think that trade for chickens and eggs. I think that brings us to the Gospel by Gen Z. What do you think?
I think it's a perfect time.
It's high time we talk about the agony, chapter 45. This artwork is an angel comforting Jesus before his arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane. I think that's how you pronounce that.
Yes, it is.
1873 by Karl Bloch. And it's also a very beautiful, looks like oil on wood that they printed for this book. So, the agony. After dinner, they spit some holy bars. Then Jesus took his 3 BSFS, Peter, James, and John aside and said, I so pale for not going to lie, I'm going through it. Chill over here while I DM God and don't be caught lacking, all right? So he went about a stone's yeet from them, and he began to DM God, saying, I know you're built different. Day 12,053 of asking for another way to save them. Nevertheless, if this must be a canon event, then bet. He went to his three BSFS, I think he means best friends, and found them sleeping, for they were too in their feels about it all. So he said, so Sacred Blood said, bruh. And 3 times he went back to pray again, word for word, bar for bar. And again, he caught them lacking in 4K. So he said, never back down, never what? Question mark. Peter said, never give up. The Holy Bro said, it's time, and the sus one has come. And Judas pulled up with a crowd of ops. He told them, the one I dap up is him. So he dapped up Jesus, but that dap was personal. So the ops started throwing hands with Jesus. Peter came in clutch and started popping the ops. And Jesus said, nah, Peter, this ain't it, for I must do the solo op of ops and wrest the dove right from his hands. Don't you know a chat full of angels would pull up if I asked? So Jesus healed the popped op and let him arrest himself. For Holy Bro was playing chess while everyone was playing checkers.
The popped op, what happened with the popped op
Mhm.
was Peter cut off his ear.
He did. Very Van
then
Gogh. It was early
Yeah,
Van Gogh.
Jesus picked it up and put it back on his head and
Inspirational.
healed it.
Inspirational.
Yeah.
I love and
Oh, we're
hate
getting
this
close.
book.
I know, we're getting close though, man.
I know. We got a handful more, man. Just a handful. Yeah. Boy, we are getting close to the end, aren't we?
Yep.
Wow.
What do we
The
got,
last
like
one's a
three-
really
three-
long one. So we're at 46 and it goes up to 50. So we got a few more.
All right.
Gospel by Gen Z. Maybe I'll give that book away when I'm done. All right. So you got travel stuff coming up next week.
I do.
This
Yeah.
week's a short week. Next week, I've got some stuff going on. So our schedule's going to be weird, guys. You're coming down here. I'm traveling. I think we're going to do a pod in person. Then I travel. Then I come back. And I think, do you go home on the day we're supposed to pod on a Tuesday?
Yes, but I was thinking we could do it Monday night.
Yeah.
Because you'll be back. So we could try to do it Monday night. So that way we can get it in before I take off.
Yeah. And then possibly the week after that, it sounds like we may have a senator and some other folks, possibly if they're scheduled, but we're not going to hold anyone to anything at this point. So we'll see.
Tentatively, it's set up for the 8th of July.
Yeah.
So, and that seems to work. And to be fair, I didn't give them a lot. And when you're dealing with, even though he's my friend, with senators, who are working with other organizations too.
Mm-hmm.
The man is incredibly busy, and I gave him about a week.
Yeah, I was going to
advance
say a
warning.
podcast may not have hit the priority list in under a week.
And he really tried, and he was like, I'm just not going to be able to do it. So
yeah.
But yeah, so it was something that Stephanie had a little bit more flexibility on. A lot of her stuff is a lot more local.
Sure.
And so, but as far as Senator Taves goes, he needed a little bit more lead time. And so I think this gives him enough lead time. And it's really important stuff. It's stuff that like we can really explore not only on a local level and how to implicate it and implement it is what I actually meant, how to implement it at a local level, but also on a state level, and then try to spread it out, because I think that it's really culture building. It's really about kind of taking back ceded ground that we've allowed, kind of nefarious groups to kind of take over.
And I want to ask him sort of a la carte, if you will, like what else is top of mind? Like, like what's good in the hood for things that are important to you during this term, even though I'm not a constituent in that area. Like it's going to be just an awesome opportunity. So if they are able to make time, we'd love to have them. So I'm
And
stoked either
he's
way.
a great guy to ask those kind of often because he does have a lot of pans in the fire.
Mhm.
And so he's one of those guys who's never kind of sitting on his heels. He's always he was probably our most effective legislator for the last two sessions,
Mhm.
bar none. So like anything that we got, remember that list I gave
Yeah.
at the end of the session? Like 60% of that had Ben Tave's name on it. So like he's the one who's like reaching across the aisle. He's such a good dude that like people who are diametrically opposed to him on an idealistic level still see him as somebody that they can talk to,
Yeah.
which is an incredibly rare gift to have these days, and especially in politics. And he has it in spades. And the man is the great negotiator. We actually have a saying when we're talking amongst ourselves, and it's what would Ben Taves do? WWBTD.
Mhm.
And because he's such a measured man and he's a very intelligent man and somebody that I would whatever political position he aspired to get to, I would support him in any capacity. That's how effective I think he is.
For fun,
And
do
yeah.
you think you could do me a favor the next time you talk to this guy? Now, I've not met him at all. The next time you talk to him, could you point blank to his face call him Ben Kenobi and then be like, did he just call me Ben Kenobi? And be like, the negotiator in your best
yes.
General Grievous that you could pull out on the fly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
that'd
sure.
be great. Be like,
Yeah,
no,
I'm
we call
gonna
you
do
the
that.
negotiator. It's a thing. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And then the negotiator. Yeah.
What's crazy is that he actually he went to high school with my wife.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, so they've known each other for a very long time. But yeah.
Well, he's
but,
going to hate
yeah.
me because I went to high school with the Crosstown Rivals, but hey, we're all friends now. We've grown past it.
He'll negotiate it. He'll yeah.
Well,
He'll
that's
find a
so
Brit.
that's what's coming up. We're hoping that we get some of that action for you guys. I'm looking forward to it. If it pans out, it'd be great. If not, we're gonna keep hitting you with stuff.
Hit us up on the socials.
Yeah, let us know what's on your mind. But yeah, that's it for me. Anything else from you?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, for Lucky I'm Angel, have a good day.
Not everybody.